Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started. Good luck. What is the purpose of code review in the context of AWS CodeCommit? To ensure code quality and identify potential issues before merging changes. To monitor application performance. To manage repository storage. To automate code deployments. Code review is conducted to ensure the quality of code and to identify any potential issues before the changes are merged into the main code base. Which of the following AWS services is commonly used to trigger actions based on changes in an AWS CodeCommit repository? AWS Lambda, Amazon RDS, Amazon S3, AWS EC2. AWS Lambda can be triggered to perform actions based on changes in a CodeCommit repository. What is the purpose of the AWS CodeCommit console? To configure network settings. To monitor application performance. To manage and view repositories and commits. To deploy applications. The AWS CodeCommit console is used to manage and view repositories and commits. What does branching mean in the context of AWS CodeCommit? Monitoring the performance of different repository versions. Creating separate versions of the repository for different features or releases. Encrypting different parts of the repository separately. Deploying the application to different environments. Branching allows developers to create separate versions of the repository for different features or releases. What type of version control system does AWS CodeCommit support? Distributed version control with Mercurial. Centralized version control with CVS. Centralized version control with Subversion. Distributed version control with Git. AWS CodeCommit supports distributed version control using Git. What is a common use case for creating multiple branches in an AWS CodeCommit repository? Encrypting data in multiple ways. Developing different features in parallel without affecting the main code base. Deploying the application to different regions. Running different versions of the application simultaneously. Creating multiple branches allows developers to work on different features in parallel without impacting the main code base. What is one advantage of using AWS CodeCommit over a self-hosted Git repository? Enhanced DDoS protection features. Automatic scaling and high availability without the need for infrastructure maintenance. Built-in web application firewall. Direct integration with machine learning services. AWS CodeCommit provides automatic scaling and high availability without requiring users to maintain the infrastructure. Which of the following benefits does AWS CodeCommit offer for managing code repositories? Built-in data warehousing. Encryption at rest and in transit. Real-time performance monitoring. Automatic code deployment. AWS CodeCommit provides encryption for data both at rest and in transit, ensuring security. What can AWS CodeCommit notifications be used for? Alerting developers about repository events like commits and pull requests. Configuring network security rules. Monitoring system health and performance. Managing database schemas. Notifications in AWS CodeCommit alert developers about events such as commits and pull requests, helping keep teams informed. Which of these best describes the pricing model of AWS CodeCommit? Flat monthly fee per repository. Pay-per-request model. Subscription-based with tiered levels. Pay-as-you-go based on storage and active users. AWS CodeCommit pricing is based on a pay-as-you-go model, factoring in storage usage and the number of active users. What is AWS CodeCommit? A service for monitoring application performance. A fully managed source control service that makes it easy for teams to host secure and scalable Git repositories. A service for deploying applications to various environments. A service for building, testing, and deploying code. AWS CodeCommit is specifically designed for source control and hosting Git repositories. How can developers be notified about changes in an AWS CodeCommit repository? By setting up notifications with Amazon SNS. Using AWS CloudTrail logs. Using AWS CloudWatch metrics. By configuring AWS Direct Connect. Amazon SNS can be configured to send notifications about changes in a CodeCommit repository. Which of the following best describes a repository in AWS CodeCommit? A service for deploying applications. A database for storing application logs. A storage location for version-controlled source code and files. A tool for monitoring cloud resources. In AWS CodeCommit, a repository is a storage location for version-controlled source code and files. Which AWS CodeCommit feature helps in tracking changes to the repository? Real-time performance dashboards. Database management tools. Automated deployment scripts. Version history and commit logs. AWS CodeCommit provides version history and commit logs to track changes made to the repository. How can you view the differences between file versions in AWS CodeCommit? By configuring AWS IAM roles. Using the git diff command. By creating an AWS CloudFormation stack. By deploying the application to a staging environment. The git diff command allows you to see the differences between file versions in a Git repository. How does AWS CodeCommit support compliance and auditing? By providing built-in compliance reports. By encrypting data multiple times. By offering real-time alerts. By integrating with AWS CloudTrail for logging API calls. AWS CodeCommit integrates with AWS CloudTrail to log API calls, supporting compliance and auditing efforts. What is the primary use case for AWS CodeCommit? Managing database instances. Automating infrastructure deployment. Source control and versioning for software development projects. Monitoring application health. AWS CodeCommit is primarily used for source control and versioning in software development projects. How does AWS CodeCommit integrate with other AWS services? By sharing instance metadata. Through AWS SDKs and APIs. Via direct database connections. Using web application firewalls. AWS CodeCommit integrates with other AWS services using AWS SDKs and APIs. What kind of data is stored in an AWS CodeCommit repository? Application logs. System performance metrics. Source code and other files used in software development. Database backups. AWS CodeCommit repositories are used to store source code and files related to software development. What feature of AWS CodeCommit helps in maintaining the security of your repositories? Database replication. Automatic code deployment. Encryption at rest and in transit. Real-time performance monitoring. AWS CodeCommit ensures security by providing encryption for data at rest and in transit. Which security measure can be applied to control who can push code to an AWS CodeCommit repository? Setting up firewall rules. Using encryption keys for authentication. Configuring IAM policies for specific users or roles. Implementing AWS Shield. IAM policies are used to control permissions, including who can push code to a CodeCommit repository. What is a typical use case for using webhooks with AWS CodeCommit? Triggering external actions based on repository events. Encrypting repository data. Monitoring application performance. Managing IAM roles and policies. Webhooks can be used to trigger external actions such as CI/CD pipelines or notifications based on repository events. How does AWS CodeCommit support continuous integration and continuous delivery? By monitoring application health in real time. By integrating with services like AWS Code Pipeline and AWS Code Build. By providing built-in testing environments. By offering database replication features. AWS CodeCommit supports CI/CD through integration with AWS Code Pipeline and AWS Code Build. What can be used to automate the process of code review in AWS CodeCommit? AWS Glue. AWS CloudFormation. CodeGuru Reviewer. AWS Lambda. CodeGuru Reviewer can be used to automate code reviews in AWS CodeCommit. What is one way to monitor changes to an AWS CodeCommit repository? Using AWS CloudWatch events or Amazon Event Bridge. Setting up an Amazon RDS instance. Deploying the code to AWS EC2. Configuring AWS CloudFormation templates. AWS CloudWatch events or Amazon Event Bridge can be used to monitor changes to a CodeCommit repository. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and, if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.